You know, there's just something about a natural edge shelf that speaks to you. Being able to see wood in its native form with bark off and a beautiful finished top is just something cool. Today we're going to get started on a shelf. I'm going to show you how to do it. After you've found your board, you're going to need to get it planed. No way around it. You can either do it by hand or through a machine. I sent mine through a machine and it created some problems which were to be expected. I've now got to start working through some sanding operations, and as you can see from some close-ups of the tear out, I've got some pretty aggressive sanding to do. We're going to start by working through a number of grits. I'm going to just allow the sander to do its work through each one. Now if you work this out by hand as opposed to with the sander, you're going to want to work with the grain and you can step through the same grits. What I did is I worked through 60, 80, 100, 120, 180, and then 200 grit. It's important to take your time with the process. Allow this to be fun and to really focus on what the detail is that you want to be able to see out of the board. Any problems left at this phase are going to show up down the line. Now normally I'd stop at about 150 grit or so, but on this specific project I want to go up a lot higher because I want to burnish some of the grain. Now in the real figured areas of the burl, a 220 grit sandpaper is going to help to kind of close off and polish that grain pattern. What that's going to do is when I put on my oil, it's really going to make the grain pop nicely. Just remember, let each grit do its work. Okay, now we're on to the fun stuff, working that live edge. What I'm going to start out doing is working a brass bristle brush through all of the contours of the live edge. My goal here is to get rid of any dirt or any loose material that might fall off during the burn process. The torch I'm using here isn't really anything special. It's something you can find at any home center. The key is that you don't want too hot of a flame in any one part, and so a little spreader on the tip is going to make a big difference. What you want to do is just work the edge of the flame, avoiding any of the nice clear grain that you've just sanded on the sides. Just allow the flame to do the work, and you'll be happy with the results. Okay, now it's time to go back to that brass brush. So I chose this type of brush because its bristles aren't too rough. If you take a look at stainless steel brushes or metal brushes for that matter, they can be a little aggressive and they can damage the surface. A natural fiber brush might be okay too. Just play it by ear and see what it does to the surface of the wood. Now I really can't stress enough the importance of cleanup at this stage. You've just created a lot of soot and you want to get a majority of that off the board. A good shop brush is going to be helpful for that. But then make sure you come down to your bench and clean up all of the surface there because you don't want that to be ground into the face of the board. Okay, now we're on to the fun stuff. We're going to be applying a finish. Now here we're going to be using General Finishes Seal-A-Cell Clear, one of my favorite finishes. It's been around for decades and it's got an oil urethane mix. The oil is going to pop the grain beautifully and that urethane mix makes it a very, very durable finish. This product is also in the same family as Armor Seal, so if you need something that's a little bit more durable, you can top coat it with that product as well. The only downside is that it takes 3 coats and about 24 hours between each coat. Now you want to be careful when you're applying the Seal-A-Cell product because it's very thin, otherwise you'll end up running it down the face, kind of like I did there. Not to worry though, I'm going to show you a little trick to get that out, but be cognizant that the soot could stain your nicely sanded surface. Our next step is going to be to wait 5 to 10 minutes and then come back and wipe down with a nice soft cotton cloth. I like to use old t-shirt material and I fold any of the cut edges inside to avoid getting any of the remnants onto the surface that we're trying to clean. We're going to wipe the excess oil off and get ready for our final step. Okay, after you've laid the board down on one of its faces, you're going to want to grab a different brush to avoid leaching soot into the nice clean surface. You'll remember the problem area that we had and take a look at how all of this works out. That's because we're blending in using the solvents of the finish and it does a great job of hiding imperfections. In fact, check out this spot right here. All that stuff's completely washed away and diluted and we're left with a beautiful popped grain that looks just absolutely fantastic. We wish finishing went this fast, but it just doesn't. So take your time, enjoy the pop of the grain, and just remember that if you put a little too much on, it's alright. Just let it soak for about 5 to 10 minutes, come on back with a cloth, and just wipe off the excess. One final word of caution for safety. Make sure you dispose of all oily rags and all paint brushes in an appropriate manner. You don't want to leave anything out that's going to potentially cause a fire. At very minimum, dry them out before you throw them away. The last thing you want to do is throw this stuff in a pile of sawdust and cause yourself a fire. And there you have it. Wipe out the surface, leave it a nice luster, and don't forget to follow up with a couple extra coats. Just wait 24 hours between each one. Well, I've got to tell you, this project turned out great. I hope you enjoy some of the pictures here of the finished shelves. Now be sure to tune in next week. Watch for our next video. I'm going to show a unique way of mounting these to the wall. We're going to be hiding the shelf bracket entirely inside the shelf. Because of the size of these, you can't really buy a shelf bracket that's this big, so I'm going to show you how to make two different models.